If you're new to reloading, there are three major types of powder. That is flake, spherical, and extruded. And I like spherical powders because they measure easily and reproducibly, and they have a little bit of temperature insensitivity. For this particular load, I'm using a powder called Ramshot LRT. It is a slow burning spherical powder, which is a characteristic usually espoused by extruded powders. In this case, LRT is a slow burning spherical powder that measures consistently through a powder dropper, and that's why I favor it. For this particular load that I developed an accuracy node for, I achieved around 2,700 feet per second using a 300 grain Sierra Match King. And this particular powder volume weight is 98.1 grains. If you look at the scale, you'll notice that the grain weight per charge is optimally at 98.1. Every now and then I get a powder throw that is 0.2 grains or so over. I simply dump those back into the hopper, dump out another charge, measure it, and if it is 98.1, I load that into my cartridge and go from there. One thing you might notice is that I'm just using a very simple Hornady scale. Incredibly inexpensive. It's probably around $30. And a simple Hornady powder dropper, not a fancy Charge Master. All of those things aid in consistency, but ultimately you can achieve consistency as long as you know your tools can achieve it. If I got constant overcharges or undercharges, whatever the case may be, and spent lots of time recalibrating or dumping powder out, I'd simply have gotten different tools. But since these work for me and have for many years, I go with what I know and don't let anybody gatekeep and make you feel insufficient if you don't have thousands of dollars in scales and automatic chargers. The last thing I'll say here is 338 Norma isn't a beginner's cartridge, although one could certainly learn on it since it isn't too terribly difficult a cartridge to load for. It doesn't have many idiosyncrasies. In fact, it's fairly straightforward. But the large powder volume may make one feel apprehensive, and so I generally recommend starting out with a 223 Remington, 5.56 NATO, or a 308 Winchester, all of which are very forgiving, and you can get die sets and brass for very inexpensive startup costs, and lots of people load for them, so lots of tutorials available online. Something you notice is in reloading, there's a very high degree of repetitiveness. You do the same small motions over and over. And one of the things that you can fall into a trap is feeling confident in your method and occasionally missing a step. But at some point, as with most things, once a person achieves a level of proficiency, all of these routine steps become ingrained, and you can achieve something of a flow state, if that can be believed. But I find reloading incredibly therapeutic simply because at the end of a session, I have something to show for my actions. One thing that you must do is double check your charges. This step is called candling, and it's effectively shining a flashlight into each of the charged cases and recognizing if there are any odd filled cases or empty cases. In this case, they all looked good. So we move on to seating our bullets. Here I'm showing you my 308 Winchester seating die as compared to my 338 Norma seating die. The 338 Norma die is much bigger comparatively. As you see, the 338 bullet here is very long, coupled with the relatively long case of 338 Norma mag. This is about the upper limit of cartridges that I would load on this particular press and on these particular presses. But as it is, I load 338 Norma on the same press that I load 223 Remington, or 5.7 for that matter. So in the event that you wanted to size up to a cartridge like 50 caliber, you would have to get a special press for that. But as it is, I load all of my cartridges on these particular presses, and they work very well. I'm just taking a measurement here with my calipers. It's a set of Mitutoyos that I bought at a garage sale for $25. The guy was pained to let him go for such a low price, but he was liquidating and needed everything to go. When I first started reloading, I piecemealed most of my kit together based on some guidance from online sources and personal resources in my social circle. Over time, I quickly found out what I needed and what I didn't need, and I worked to acquire those things that would make my life easier. And so if you decide to get into reloading, I would start with minimal equipment up front and then add as you go. So as I was about to load, this casing, I noticed a little sliver of light visible in the background, and it's very difficult to see. You almost need to backlight it. And there it is. It's a very small split in the neck. I'm not gonna load it, and I'm gonna pump out the primer and discard this casing. It's done. In all, it got me about 17 cartridges with just around 98.1 grains. Let's go ahead and round that up to 100, and that means that I used roughly 1,700 grains of powder. So if you do the math, a pound of powder is about 7,000 grains, and so this 1 pound of Ramshot LRT will get me roughly 70 cartridges. Now that might not sound like a lot, but considering if you go out and price 338 Norma for 20 rounds, you tell me if that isn't an economical value of doing it yourself. But you be the judge. It's your time, it's your money, it's your rifle, it's your target. So you make up your mind. But I hope you enjoyed making 338 Norma with me, and maybe in a future episode we'll shoot some of this and see what she can do. I happen to know the velocity and accuracy capacity of this cartridge, or accuracy potential of this cartridge, but we'll do it again and let you see for yourself. As it turns out, I got a moment, so I'm going to do some shooting at the end of this video. But before we get there, I'll just remind you, using a L.E. Wilson case gauge to case gauge all my cartridges to make sure that they will seat and that there are no oddities or issues with them, so that I feel confident when I do decide to load them up and shoot them.